Welcome to Real Estate Radio Power Investing, an informative and engaging hour discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate investing. Your host, Tom K. Wilson, provides you with insight and guidance from his years of experience as a successful real estate entrepreneur on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate, and much more. Now, here's your host for Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
So nice to have you back with us. Thanks for tuning in to our Real Estate Power Investing program, where we empower you with the education to maximize your investing success. We're broadcasting from the #1 business radio station in the San Francisco Bay Area, KDOW-AM 1220, the Wall Street Business Network. I'm Tom K. Wilson, your host for this weekly program on real estate investing. If you can't make the live show, you can catch our podcast on TomWilsonProperties.com or on iTunes or on YouTube. You can go to TomWilsonProperties.com also for lots of education information on real estate investing. We encourage you to do that. Also, there are products there that are available, houses, syndications, commercial, residential properties that you may be interested in, and a lot of white papers and material that helps teach you about how to select what to invest in and how to go about that. We also welcome your questions, welcome your recommendations on topics and guests to have on, and also we're available to answer any questions that you might have for us. So we're very pleased today to have a program on real estate development, and we have with us Beth Clifford, who is a longtime friend of mine of several years. Met her through Real Estate Guys Summit at Sea. Beth has many years of investing experience, started off as a techie, like many of our listeners here in the Bay Area, in the IT world, managing many different programs in large companies, and started her own company in IT. She's an economics graduate from Northeastern University, has an MBA, and she's continues to learn, and she continues to teach. She's been on the faculty of Summit at Sea for many years. And it's a real pleasure to have her with us here today to talk about her experience in real estate developing. Hi, Beth.
How you doing, Tom?
Great. Thanks so much for coming out here to be with us.
It's a pleasure.
Your home's back east, and you got a very, very busy schedule, and we appreciate you fitting in, coming out to speak to our one of our clubs tonight, SJREI, and also to be on the radio program.
No, thank you very much. I left the Bay Area 10 years ago, and I'm amazed at how it's grown since I left.
It is. It's certainly been an exciting place for me to be. I arrived in '69, and I'm just as amazed today as the day I arrived. Mm-hmm. When I arrived, they said it was had its run. It was dead. All the jobs are going offshore. Here we are watching cycle number 5,
That's
and
right.
It's pretty exciting indeed.
You bet.
Talk to us just briefly about your the initial part of your career in the IT world, and how that led to real estate.
You bet. I started out in basically. I tell people I've had basically 3 different careers, but my first career was worked with a small company called Digital Equipment Corporation. So you may have remembered it from. Now we're aging ourselves.
I sure do. I got enough gray hair.
Yeah, for the millennials, they don't know what that means, but
that was a powerhouse in its day, real pioneer.
Yeah, it was in Fortune 50 company, and I was fortunate to enter into a program with them where they were hiring the next 100 senior level managers to come on board. And so I was fortunate to be educated by them for over a year, and ended up running for them the top 10 banks in Wall Street for them. And so my career is always kind of on the IT side has always been about how do you help people solve problems? And almost always they were in the operational and execution parts of their businesses. And so worked for Digital Equipment for a number of years, then came out to Silicon Valley, had my own software development companies and management consulting companies where we were always helping companies go problem solve and do very rapid prototypes in development for solving mission critical problems. And so even out here when I was was we would go into Pacific Bell, and they would have a problem. They would hire us to come in, would solve the problem in 2 weeks for them, come up with a prototype for them, and then they'd hand it off to their internal coders to make it hard wrapped for them. But that's kind of always been my interest, which is how do you go solve a problem, do it the most effective way. I've been a advocate of the Pareto analysis my entire life, and belief that you can solve most 80% of all your problems in life with 20% of the effort if you really go find it properly. And then the next 80% of your effort is going to go to make things bulletproof.
So talk to us about how that evolved into real estate.
It did. Well, after doing a lot of management consulting and honing the company, and as the company grows, you find that you're no longer problem solving anymore. You're actually personnel manager. And so I decided I really wanted to get back into something that I really love, which is the real work itself. And so right in my mid-30s, I went and said, you know what, the thing I've always loved to go do is build things. And it came from my grandfather. My grandfather had a very small construction company, and I remember driving around to the job sites with him, 3-4 years old, going, and he'd take me around to his job sites. And so I remembered it very, very well. And I said, I want to go build something. I want to go work not just in the virtual world of solving problems. I wanted to go enter into the 3D world. I
love hearing about those crossroads and people that influenced you. And at the time, you don't realize it, but later you can look back and say, oh, that was why. I had a grandfather who was an entrepreneur, had 14 businesses, everything from a barrel factory to an airport. And he'd take me around and show me all those things. And, I never, of course, you don't think about it at the time. And then later on, I think, okay, he probably planted the seeds for my want to go off on my own.
It is, because I remember very well with my grandfather, he had like an old, it was like a 1956 pickup truck, and it was all hand tools back then, it wasn't what we had today. And he would take me out on the site with him, and I would sit on all of his tools. They'd be right next to him on the bench seat, and there wasn't space for me to actually sit. But do you
have a picture of that?
I don't. I wish I did, because I would be sitting there in my little dress and driving around with my grandfather, sitting on top of his chisels and hammers and everything else. And I loved, I loved when I would go there and they were framing things and, seeing things in the 3D. So that's how I transitioned into it, which is I actually do think in the 3D. I'm a very virtual and very visual person. And so I looked at transitioning into how could I leverage what I had done very, very well over the last 20 years of my career, which was doing technology into solving business critical problems. How can I go leverage that and move it into a new career? And so I joined partners with a woman who had a very large and well-established construction management company. So I came in bringing a lot of the IT and technology and process development and brought that into very large-scale construction management. And if you know very much about the construction industry, it's an industry that pretty much wakes up every day and decides, what do I need to do today in order to work? And so it's not a lot
of planning, not like it is in high tech in Silicon Valley.
It is not. So it's not like just-in-time manufacturing or K-Bon or anything like that. Those kind of influences had never reached those industries at that time. And so we came in. What
time period was that roughly?
So that was in 1994. I mean, this is almost pre-internet times. And so Netscape browser was about it, and there was very little going on. And so we ended up taking a lot because I've been doing a lot of MRP and MRP2 implementations. And so we took that type of philosophy, married it with AutoCAD, and then married it with project management and time management technologies. And so that we ended up creating a very, very rapid development execution program for very large scale development or construction projects. And so we were working on some of the five most difficult things to, one of the top five most difficult things to build in the world is a semiconductor facility. And so that's what we were building. We were building biopharmaceutical and semiconductor facilities.
You started off at the top.
Yeah, we do. That's what we decided. Well, it's like as our new president has said, is if you're going to go think big, if you're going to go think, you might as well think big. So if you're going to go work hard, why don't you go work, on something really big?
And you did a lot of that for a while, right?
I did. I did that for about 8 years. The issue became for me, which is I was a single mom, and unfortunately, people don't bring semiconductor facilities and put them in your backyard and say build them for you. So you've got to travel the world in order to go do that. So I did about 5 of them.
Even Silicon Valley, where it had gotten too expensive.
Oh
for
yeah,
the
you
local
couldn't
labor.
do it anymore. Yeah, I mean, the land value here and the cost is too
that was going
expensive.
up faster than the ability to automate the thing.
That is, yeah. So my next one was going to be in China, and that was going to be a 3-year haul, and doing a greenfield development. And I said that's probably not what I want to go do as a single mom, is move to China and build a big facility. So then I transitioned from there, and I basically started doing regular development.
And what's regular development?
Yeah, I know. That's a good point. I'm just going to say that to myself. Like, what is regular development? So
you left yourself open for that one.
I did set myself up. I like that. So that was purely really working as an owner's rep, right? And so when you look at doing overall development, there's so much more than that, right? Which is I was critical in that I would be working for Intel or Motorola or Samsung or Hyundai, and I would be working on behalf of the owner itself in order to go build the building. But I would not be at the top of the food chain, which is as the owner, which is doing the land acquisition, doing the full design of the property, laying out all of the strategic partners that you wanted to go do. And so I then looked at that as a springboard into, well, I want to go further up into the food chain with a wider and broader view of it, which is how do you solve the overall business problem for a company and go do development. And so that's where I transitioned into being a developer.
And you talk about the construction world not using a lot of the generalist skills that are in a technical manufacturing world, and that's even at the high level. So, boy, you get down to building multifam or a house, and that's really not very much of that planning involved. Right?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
no.
And that certainly seems to me that that's a good differentiation area where if you can do that planning and do a little better just-in-time work and so forth, you can do a better job than your competition.
It is, and one of the things I wanted to talk with you was to share with your group this evening was really about my belief has always been you make your money on paper. If you can't plan it, if you can't define it, if you don't know who your buyer is going to be, if you don't understand how you're going to create value on paper, then forget about the execution mode. So a bad plan.
It's too late then.
It's too late to fix it at that point, or it's really expensive to fix it at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you luck out and have a market that's going and skyrocketing and where you can make big mistakes and come out okay, all right, you can still look like you're good. But boy, in a normal market, it's too late.
You've really got to plan. You've really got to know who your buyer is. You've really got to know how you're going to put your strategic plan together with your teammates and having a great team. And if you don't have those boxes checked, you're going to have a tough time.
Yeah. Well, so that's very interesting that you started off at a very, very high level on large projects. Certainly, if you can do that, you certainly picked up a lot of additional skill sets that helped you with smaller projects. I'm sure. And when we come back here in a couple minutes after the commercials and breaks, we'll talk some more to Beth about the projects that she's done. That's maybe a little bit more of the size that our listeners are maybe interested in learning about and how I can apply those skills. So we have Beth Clifford today with us, international experienced developer and originally a techie. So a lot of you can relate to that. Stay with us and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, visit TomWilsonProperties.com. That's TomWilsonProperties.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
So nice to have with us today Beth Clifford in studio, longtime entrepreneur and technology manager in the IT world and real estate developer. And we are talking about how the path led her to this point of doing real estate and developing. So she was doing large projects for other companies and decided it was maybe time to do something for herself at a scale that's a little bit more manageable and she could control where she did that. So let's take off from there, Beth, and just give us a little overview of the kinds of projects you've done on your own in the last several years.
You bet. I've done everything from medical office buildings to retail, shopping. I've done infill residential projects. I've done big resorts in the Caribbean. I've done specialty homes I've done as well. So I've done a little bit of kind of a vast array of projects. I like to think of them, what I basically focused on during the downturn, which was from 2008 to 2010, is I lived in Washington, D.C. And so I looked at buying a lot of property that was distressed down there and assembling it and putting together kind of a different product for the DC area, which was very well received. So it's varied. It's varied from projects that are, I like to think in DC, I like to call them, I was bunting around the bases. So bunting around the bases to me was fairly small projects, which means they're anywhere from $3 million to $25 million total sellout projects. Nothing that's going to be life-changing for anybody, but ones that had very short time frames on them and seemed to be pretty sure winners. I would walk into banks and be able to get lending immediately on them because nothing inside of them was, crazy numbers. I've also at the same time worked on a home run project, which is a $500 million project at the same time. So I like to look at my development efforts into kind of, singles, doubles, and home runs. And I don't like to do just all home runs because home runs can, if you hit them, if you swing for the fences, that's great when you hit the home run. But you also can strike out doing it as well.
Well, you spend enough time in Silicon Valley to know that you got to hit quite a few times before you get a home run.
What do they call about the unicorn? Is that right? Yeah, absolutely.
Most people are shocked to learn that 1 in 10 is outstanding.
That's a great number. That's a great number.
Really
is that right?
Yep.
Yep.
So can you share with us some of your personal business model fees? Were you typically getting equity for your management success in these projects? Yeah,
so my traditional models are this, which is I raise a Class A round, and it's almost always, I call it the angel round. My personal investment philosophy is I like to see a sponsor have at least 10%, if not 20% of their own personal money inside of their projects. And so I follow that same business model for myself. So the A round is one where you basically get the assets and get control of them using the first money in, which will be the A round. And then you go through all the feasibility studies. And so obviously the angel people are going to get the highest rate of return, but they're also at the highest risk because there's a potential where there may be a no-go decision in the middle of that. And then once the viability comes through, entitlements, whatever you've got to go do in order to move the project from concept through schematic design and get it to a working pro forma with financial and business partners tentatively put in place, then I raise a B round. That's when I know exactly, what my capital stack will look like. So how much will be debt, how much is going to be equity, then I'll go raise B rounds. And then occasionally there'll be a C round too, because sometimes the longevity of the project.
On the size of the project or how much entitlement there might be.
All that kinds of stuff, So maybe there's a C round as well. But there's very clear structure for every one of them. Every one of them is put into a single purpose entity, LLC. Very simple. I mean, nothing rocket science in the middle of it. I try to keep all of my entities very, very simple. Contracts very simple. No complicated waterfalls. It's all done very simply by equity shares in the company itself.
And do you sometimes continue to hold it, or most of the time you're getting out and moving to the next project?
Varies, and each one of them will have their own exit strategy. Mm-hmm. So some of them are pure retail projects, and once we sell the last store, we roll up the company, distribute everything, and it's gone. Others are build and holds.
Got Beth Clifford with us today in studio, talking about her experiences in real estate development. And when we get back, we'll talk a little bit more about what kinds of things that she's learned that has helped her be successful and which things kind of to avoid. So stay with us.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, visit TomWilsonProperties.com. That's TomWilsonProperties.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
Have Beth Clifford with us today, experienced investor and real estate developer, telling us and sharing with us about her experiences. So, Beth, what are some of the things that you feel have helped you be successful?
I had a couple things. I had great mentors in my life. Had a couple of them that, and they came from various places. It's amazing. It's they don't have to be the CEOs. It can be people all around you. So I've had,
and they don't have to have the technical specialty, right?
No, they don't.
It can be generally skills.
You know, I won't go through the story, but I mean, I learned an amazing thing from a homeless woman in San Francisco one day. So I mean, it doesn't matter. I think there's tidbits that you can learn from just about anybody. The other is I'm a continuous learner. I read 150, 200 books a year, and you got to stay up on top of things. For me, I think you've got to stay vibrant. You've got to travel. You've got to stay. You got to stay in the ethos of opportunity and optimism. And so you've got to stay with great people around you. You got to stay with people who are honest with you, who give you really good feedback and tell you when you're doing great and when you're doing poorly. I think that's it. I mean, I think there's if I had to sum it up, I think you have to have a lot of humility. And so if you come into the world with a lot of humility and you look for win-win with everybody that you encounter, then you will turn around and be greatly blessed in your life and have an opportunity to bless others as well.
And I find if you don't come into the world with a lot of humility, it won't be too long before you'll get an experience.
You will be humbled.
Yes.
Don't you think? I just do.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think, I don't know. I think it's
and that's a real empowering thing, isn't it?
It really is.
It's very, as we tell, and Robert Helms often says, that you go along having a lot of successes, and all of a sudden you start to think that it's you,
and it's really not. You
may have made some contribution, but it's a lot of other things that have to happen.
You really do, and you have to bring everybody along with you. I think it's for me where I am now, and running several different companies. It's up to me to be kind of the leader of the vision and holding on to that vision, creating the ethos. And then actually taking no credit, but taking 100% of the blame. And when you have that kind of a perspective, then I think you're able to attract really good team members who want to be working around you. I don't know, it's a humbling thing. I don't know. It's also getting old. Getting old gives you a completely different perspective. I think back of when I was 20 years old and on Wall Street, I thought I knew everything. And now I'm in my late 50s and I realize I know almost nothing. But I've had a lot of wisdom, certainly than I used to have. But I certainly understand in this world today, things travel and change so quickly. And there's just no way you can ever believe that you know the answer to everything. And so you better be able to say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll get the answer to that.
Mm-hmm. And I find that certain things that I learn, they really stick with me. Unfortunately, some of those are ones when you fail, right? But for some reason, human nature is that you really hang on to those. But some successes, I hang on to some of that too. But then there are other things that I've learned and I have to keep relearning.
Yep.
Yeah, I have to readdressing, go back to mentors or new mentors and get that lesson taught maybe from a different perspective or be reminded of it. You get kind of get in your own rut of doing things a certain way, and we tend to kind of, I think, not be as efficient and not be as good at things if we don't stay fresh. So you're reading and you're staying in touch with people. I'm sure helps you with that quite a bit. We'll be back in just a moment with see if we can do a little bit of nuts and bolts things here with Beth on what works and doesn't work in the real estate development arena. So stay with us, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, visit TomWilsonProperties.com. That's TomWilsonProperties.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
So nice to have Beth Clifford in studio today on Real Estate Power Investing, talking about her experience of real estate developing. So, Beth, if someone says, gosh, I've been buying houses and that working okay, but I'm ready for something a little bigger. First of all, would you say, sure, go off and give it a shot? Or would you say, go find somebody who's done it and team up with them and see what you can bring to the table?
Yeah, people ask me that question a lot. And one of the ways I always look at it with people is I say, if you've just... One good way is to go flip or get involved in finding value in existing properties and forcing equity. And so I always say, well, you're going to learn more if you go out and buy an underutilized asset and go force the equity into it by figuring out who the primary buyer for that property will end up being, and completing the restoration or whatever needs to be done to it, and doing that successfully. And go do that in a price point that makes sense, that if you do it and you break even, or you do it and you lose 10%, that's still cheaper.
You can live with it.
Yeah. That's still cheaper than going to Stanford for 3 years and getting your CM in development degree.
And more relevant.
Mm-hmm. And you'll build a team. You'll learn hard knocks. You'll learn horrible lessons through it. You'll understand what it takes to go do it, and how much work and effort it is, how you're going to have to more than likely thread the needle through the eye of the needle is never going to be straightforward for you. And you're going to end up, as that project moves along, it's going to become very vitally obvious to you what next steps are. I've got to entitle this. I've got to go do this with the government. I've got to go do this with insurance, et cetera, et cetera. So I think just go do one is the better way to go do it. The other is, I went out and partnered with somebody. That's not a bad way to go do it either. Other is, go in and go work on a development team with somebody and ask them to become part of it. Many developers are interested in having interns and people. They're going to obviously kind of not be as excited to educate you to educate their competitor, but they certainly would be interested if you're interested in joining a development team. So I don't know. I always say just go do it, but do it on a scale that's not going to kill you. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't go do $1 billion project and decide to go next to Trump Tower and build something on your first one.
Yeah, so I like that two option approach. Either if you're going to do it on your own, start small and get dirty and go figure that out. Or if you go a little bit larger, go ride on the coattails of somebody else and mm-hmm. bring something to the party. Either your time to help manage or source material or all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, flipping. Certainly, most of the quote unquote flipping that I've done, and I don't know, maybe 600 some properties have been primarily cosmetic, and a lot of that, so most of that's mostly farmed out. Mm-hmm. But I've done probably 30 flips that are where I was involved, probably more so than I wanted to be a lot of the time, mm-hmm. and larger deals. And it is amazing how much you learn by doing that. You have to. I mean, when you got skin in the game and your butt's on the line, I find that you very valuable to get consulting and input from others, but in the end, you've got to make that decision.
And doing it that way, you're going to find out, do you like this work? And what parts of the work do you like? What parts of the
mm-hmm.
work don't you like to do? When you go do that, you're basically the CEO of a brand new company, and you've got to do everything from legal to accounting to HR to team management to design to development to sales. You're going to do it all. And then you're going to find partners that are going to be with you to go do parts of it, because you can't do everything, assuming you're not going going to drive every nail. You're not going to wax every floor. So you've got to go figure out which are the partners and you're going to bring on board. And it allows you to understand, when you wake up in the morning as part of your own CEO of your own company, well, what are the things that you naturally gravitate to that you're excited about doing? And then what are the things that end up on your to-do list that you always go week to week to week? You get transferred every week onto the to-do list because you can't stand doing it. And so those are the things that are the things that you don't like doing. And probably either you don't like doing them or you don't have the ability to go do them or you don't have the passion, but whatever that is. But that then becomes a clear indicator to you. These are the things I shouldn't be involved in, and I need to go find a partner to go do those things. But these are the 8 things inside of the 50 things that need to be done inside of real estate development that I have a passion for, but the other 42 I don't, and I need to go find partners or other people to help me with those pieces. And that's a valuable lesson to move forward to. And you may turn out, I don't like it. I work 7 days a week, Tom. So I work 7 days a week. I think
most entrepreneurs do, don't they?
Yeah, I work 12 to 14 hours a day. I go to bed. I wake up, I'm insomniac. I'm cleaning out emails at 2, 4 in the morning. That's what it takes to go be an entrepreneur.
Yep.
And so if you think you're going to get 2 weekend, I don't know what a holiday is. Thanksgiving was 3 hours break to go have dinner with all of my direct reports. So you got to understand if that's what you want to go into, that's what your life is going to be. And so this thing that entrepreneurs, we get, 4 weeks paid vacation and weekends off, and no, it never ends.
No, you got, and that's a world that a lot of people don't realize is the real world. You mentioned certainly to avoid doing things, learn what things that you aren't good at or don't want to do. And delegate that to find somebody else. Can you think of another item that people should be careful about avoiding and specifically in real estate developing that you've seen people fail because of it?
I look at performers, and I always look at them and I multiply the schedule times 2 and the budget times 2. So it's always, I look at them usually as a factor of 4. People are very optimistic in their numbers. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's really going to be that much, but I think people become very optimistic and they think that they can manage some things that are out of their control, particularly when government and entitlements and those type of items are involved. You've got to be very careful about what time horizons look like, and then also how that marries with how markets are and business cycles. Yes.
Yes. What yours on your agenda might not be on their agenda.
Exactly true.
We'll be back for a little wrap up here in a moment with Beth Clifford on real estate developing. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, visit TomWilsonProperties.com. That's TomWilsonProperties.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
So nice to have Beth Clifford with us today, sharing with us her experience as a real estate developer. Beth, one thing we didn't touch on, and a lot of folks, if they decide to start off with some real estate developing, is land entitlement. Certainly, people have often heard that land is where you can make the most money, but of course, obviously, that says automatically it has the most risk, and part of that's the whole entitlement process. How often are you dealing with the entitlement process versus buying land that's already entitled, and tell people what that means?
Yeah. So land in almost every country, and certainly in the United States, is typically under zoning laws. And so when you purchase a piece of land, it will already have its zoning code with it. And so it could be residential, or it could be R1, which might mean in a jurisdiction that means 1 unit per acre, or R5, 1 unit per 5 acres. And so the entitlement process is when you change the use in zoning from one use to another use. And so as you go up the pyramid if you go to like an R25 would be 1 unit for 25 acres, which would be a very rural distinction. And so if you were to take an R25 and move it to all the way up the pyramid to a C3, which is commercial grade 3 with very high density on it, then the value of that piece of land changes. Just as if you were to go take agricultural and move it into residential land, all of a sudden there's a change in the value of the use of that land, or the production or the yield of that land. And so there's an incredible amount of money to be made by upzoning property. Now, what it comes with is an incredible amount of risk, because there's forces against you, which is there could be a local jurisdiction forces, which is their own master plans for certain areas where they're not looking to change any of these particular items. And there's nothing prescriptive in many ways that says that anything can be upzoned. And so there's no prescribed right to say that you can move this from agricultural land to residential. And so you've got to come up with a reason why and how, and why does that make sense? And so now you start entering into a political atmosphere. And a political atmosphere is different than development. This doesn't necessarily work on logic. This doesn't work on it makes sense to people. Or
your time frame, or your control.
Or anything. It's none of those things. And so you've got to now find a way to go do entitlement where you kind of find a win-win for people. So it's a high-risk game, but it's one that you better understand. It's kind of like those people say, it's like you should never ask a question in court unless you know the answer. The same thing is you shouldn't go into entitlement and really move forward and buy land unless you already know the answer that you're going to be able, with some surety, to be able to upzone.
Good. Wonderful overview there about land entitlement. Probably not the best place for folks to start if they're doing development. Get somebody who knows how to do that. Been wonderful having you with us today, Beth Clifford, entrepreneur, longtime real estate developer, telling us about her experiences in that arena. Remember to go to TomWilsonProperties.com, and you can pull up this podcast for listening to it again in the future. Also, a lot of education information on the website about this, syndications, see what other kinds of products might be of interest to you in the investing arena. So we're on weekly for Real Estate Power Investing, and we hope that you'll be back with us in the near future to listen to another podcast on real estate investing. Remember, the only thing that matters is what you do next.